Hello and welcome to the View podcast number 9. Gosh, we're nearly at double digits, and we would have been by now if I hadn't have taken a 2-week holiday. I know, it's an absolute disgrace, but now I'm back at the grindstone. Well, my desk, bent over the microphone. Well, sat actually, and it's quite comfortable, and actually it's rather nice to be back. And as you can hear, the lying, it's coming on really well. Today on The View, we've got musical madness in Thames Television's 60s Groove Fest, the Tyrant King, continuing onwards with the Bill watchthrough, All Gas and Gaiters, the Winslow Boy, and Superman. It's all on the 9th edition of The View. So, starting things off then, got to ask, actually, do we like the music? It's not pretentious, is it? Does it lend these podcasts a degree of class that it doesn't deserve? Let me know. Let me know if you like it. Let me know if you don't. So starting off with The Tyrant King. In 1968, Thames Television wanted to test the feasibility of having another in-house production team, a kind of secondary unit, making programmes without the use of studios, instead filming everything on location and on film. And eventually, this setup would become known as Houston Films, who were responsible for many films and television shows, including, among a great many others, The Sweeney and Minder. The production that Thames commissioned as the test piece for this was adapted for television by screenwriter Trevor Preston, who later created Ace of Wands, from the book by Alma Hall. The director, Mike Hodges, who would later go on to do Get Carter, would take his cast and crew to many different locations, most of which would be famous London landmarks. Tower Bridge, Buckingham Palace, the Greenwich Meridian, the Imperial War Museum, to name just a handful. It stars Welsh actor Philip Maddock, and the leads are played by actors from a juvenile drama school, including Candice Glendenning, here billed as Candy Glendenning. Classic cult television fans will remember her as Rochelle, the Bond slave in Blake 7, and classic horror movie buffs will likely remember her from The Tower of Death. But the most interesting thing about The Tyrant King is the music from the likes of Pink Floyd, Cream, the Moody Blues, and the Nice, among others, including briefly the Rolling Stones. Now I'll get to the music again in just a moment. The story starts when one of the three leads, Peter, tests a telescope by looking out of his friend's bedroom window at a big scruffy house across the street. Now, I can't remember why the three of them, Peter, Charlotte and Bill, go to this house, but they do, and when they get there, it is deserted. But they can hear an apparently very feminine-sounding man speaking with a highly received pronunciation, so that's quite a possible voice, on the telephone about something that sounds very, very dodgy. Illegal even. Is the guy putting the voice on? What's going on here? He rushes out of the room, this guy, and the kids, they follow him as they try to recall the things that they heard him say. By following these clues, the adolescent sleuths go off to find where these dodgy men might be meeting, which is where all the London landmarks come in. Earlier in their quest, they keep seeing a man with a deep scar on his face in all the same places. Everywhere they go, he's either just arriving, just leaving, or they're waiting for them. And while in the house, before they left, one of them picks up a wallet that they found on the floor. Now, the wallet's empty, or at least so they think. Later, they have an accident with the wallet, which causes a tear in the side, which reveals a folded up piece of paper hidden inside. On the paper is a series of elaborate drawings and what looks like a map, and this gives the amateur sleuths something more to go on, and that precipitates more chasing around London, while some of the best trip-out music of the era accompanies the action. The plot is very thin. Peter, Charlotte and Bill, who have pretty well-to-do parents, so how they pay to do all the travel on buses, ferries and trains, not to mention admission to most of the attractions. That stuff doesn't need to be addressed. They're wealthy enough. that these characters are putting in a lot of work, really, on the scantiest of evidence, and their intuition that something bad is going to go down is what drives the first couple of episodes. Though there are some mildly exciting moments speckled throughout the 6 episodes, it really is episode 6 that is the most eventful and reveals whether the kids were right to follow their quest, their hunch, to its conclusion. Welsh actor Philip Maddock is the baddie, Scarface, and he's the main guest star of this production. And, I think this must have been quite an enjoyable job for Philip Maddock. Not only is he on location throughout, but until we get to the 6th episode, he has actually got less than 20 lines of dialogue. And it also looks to have been a very sunny summer shoot with 3 very capable young actors. The 3 lead characters, as I said, are played by actors from a juvenile drama school. And the most noticeable thing about this production is the music. To begin with, the music feels incredibly boisterous, and as tunes from the likes of The Nice play in the background, mainly when the characters are travelling somewhere, it makes it seem like every time they go outdoors, the streets are filled with the sounds of prog rock, which I quite like the sound of that, actually. I became used to the music as the 2nd episode started, and slowly, until midway through the 3rd episode, I found I actually really liked the music. By the 4th episode, I was playing some of the songs on YouTube. By the time I got to the 5th episode, a really impossible to shift earworm had set in, and by now I was looking forward to the scenes of chasing around and travelling to places in London and the music kicking in. But by the time I got to the 6th episode, which had less music overall, because a lot of the plot resolution stuff takes place and takes priority in episode 6, I think I was kind of over the music and definitely more into the story by that point. Considering how many productions have original music dubbed with something generic to save royalty fees, or how many re-releases are spoiled or even put on hold indefinitely, like 2.4 Children, because permission to use the music hasn't been granted by the original artists, it is, from the perspective of preservation, if nothing else, absolutely splendid that The Tyrant King has arrived on DVD completely intact. Especially when you consider that The Tyrant King, it was shown just once on television in black and white, but network DVD release, they have done a new transfer from the original film material. That's pretty cool, I think. So they actually present The Tyrant King to us on DVD in colour for the very first time. I think that's marvellous. Really, I do. The Tyrant King, it was produced with a lot of help from London Transport, and this is evident throughout, and they naturally receive an on-screen credit at the end of all 6 episodes. It gives the travelling around scenes quite a cosy feel to them, I think. Perhaps that's just me. This experimental production, it's split into 6 25-minute episodes, approximately running to 150 minutes in total, so it all fits quite comfortably onto one DVD. And being as this is the network DVD release review section of this podcast, just like really got like a long name, but being as this is the section of the podcast where I talk about such things, I'm going to tell you about this version of the Tyrant King that I purchased. I got it from eBay for £12. It felt like a bit of a bargain. I don't know if it really was, but it felt like it. Now, the DVD is in a smaller than standard DVD case. It's actually more the size of a CD case, but in a clear plastic DVD style case. The pictures of this are on Substack and WordPress if you want to see. And the actual disc inside, it's a really nice touch because it looks like a little mini vinyl record, presumably a nod to the incidental music that's used throughout this. Inside, on the inside cover, is a stylized photo of Candice Glendenning and brief synopsis of each of the 6 episodes. This particular release from Network did not come with any viewing notes. Mine came out of the cellophane wrapper, and there were no viewing notes, so obviously this one didn't have any. So onto the music then. I'm going to talk about the music now, because this really is the main part of The Tyrant King, for me anyway. I'm quite a big fan of rock and the various subgenres, and I'm not adverse to a little psychedelic, experimental prog rock. And the songs here are pretty good examples of those genres, but with a thin plot and mostly unknown actors in every role, the music plays a very heavy part in the appeal of this programme. It's almost as if Mike Hodges sought to use music that would help distract the viewer from the familiar locations, the unknown actors, and the thin plot. So it's all part of the plan, really, and perfectly valid. And it makes sense when you consider what an important part the music, particularly the opening theme, made to the atmosphere of Get Carter. But if the music in this is not to your taste for whatever reason, then there is not much else to hang on to other than seeing 1960s London in all its colourful splendour. The music then, it comes, I'll give you a list of the music. So we've got Pink Floyd, Astronomy Domine, The Nice, The Thoughts of Emeralist Davjak, The Moody Blues, Dr. Livingstone, I Presume, The Nice, Tantalising Maggie, Cream, As You Said, Pink Floyd, again, A Saucer Full of Secrets, and The Rolling Stones, She's a Rainbow. If you go on to noscriptforlife.wordpress.com, then you will find a list of the music along with the links to the videos on YouTube. And you can also find them on my Substack. That's Martin Gregory's View.substack.com. I'd like to tell you now about one of the things I've been listening to. It's the Winslow Boy. Now, how did I get onto that? You might well ask. Well, loyal listeners, and a special shout out to you both, by the way, will know I'm still writing a book on The Man in Room 17, the classic, the forgotten classic made by Granada TV back in 1967. Now, part of my research is to listen and watch things starring the show's leads, Michael Aldridge, Richard Vernon, and Denham Elliott. So far, I've heard Richard Vernon in The Blandings, Denham Elliott on Desert Island Discs, and both Vernon and Aldridge when they co-starred in one episode of Last of the Summer Wine. I've got my headphones on again for my next bit of research. Michael Aldridge, along with Aubrey Woods, stars in this adaptation of Terence Rattigan's The Winslow Boy. Now, for those of you who don't know, The Winslow Boy is an English play written in 1946 by Terence Rattigan, based on a true story involving one George Archer Shee, who was accused by the Royal Naval College, Osborne, of stealing a £5 postal order. He was discharged, though he was believed to be innocent. The incident challenged the conventions of the Royal Navy, and it caused a major sensation back in 1910. So this is very much based on real-life events. Rattigan's The Winslow Boy is the story of a proud father whose juvenile son is dishonourably discharged from the Navy cadets after he is accused of stealing a £5 postal order from a fellow pupil. He believes his son's innocence, and in order to see the case get justice, he risks the finance of his family, the marriage of his daughter, and the reputation of the finest legal mind in England, just to get the case reopened. At first, that's all they really want, is just to get the case reopened. When they eventually get that, they are dissatisfied with the result, and the matter is discussed in chambers up and down the country, debated in the House of Commons and in the Lords, and in the end, finally, the matter is allowed to go to court. It's quite an intense production, adapted from a very good play for radio, and Michael Aldridge, as I expected, is just superb in the role. Aubrey Woods, however, now if you're not familiar with this actor, and those people out there listening who are Doctor Who or Blake Seven fans will certainly know who Aubrey Woods is, then do listen to him in this, if nothing else. He plays a right git of a leading lawyer, arrogant, vain, cocky. He's sublime, truly. I listened to this for Aldridge, but it was Aubrey Woods who impressed me. He brings such an intensity to his role as Sir Robert Morton, the fiercest legal mind, indeed wit, in the country. There is genuine pathos in this, and though the story of a family who puts everything on the line just so that right can be done sounds somewhat basic, but the performances and the characterization are really what this is all about. And the devil, as ever with stage plays, is in the detail. The things not said, the things spoken in metaphor or jest disguised as metaphor. There is much subtext and subtle interplay between the characters in this. Indeed, this is a very well-studied portrait of an mid-upper class family, far more than the study of just one prideful father. There are the other members of the family who are affected by this ongoing case. There's much symbolism to be found and a great deal of subtlety between the lines. I hadn't experienced The Winslow Boy before hearing this production, though it has been adapted many times over the last century for the stage, the screen, both big and small, and for radio. This version that I listened to was produced in 1981 for BBC Radio 4. Apart from starring Aubrey Woods as Morton and Michael Aldridge as Arthur Winslow, there is Sarah Bedell as Catherine Winslow and Michael Maloney as Dickie Winslow. I think I do recall seeing other adaptations of Terence Rattigan's plays elsewhere, and I can't immediately remember which one or ones. But they must have stuck in my memory, and I must have been impressed with the writing. And like I was with this, really, I was impressed with the writing and the pace of the production and the performers themselves. Sarah Bedell in this gives a great performance of a woman torn between her personal needs and desires and that of the activist inside of her. The side of her that isn't prideful or scorned, as her father's may possibly be, the side that seeks out what is right and what is just. Subscribers to The View will receive my regular newsletters of where to find these things for yourself, including links where appropriate. That's something that's going to be coming up soon. And if you enjoyed and if you like the sound of The Winslow Boy, this particular production, then that will be included in that first newsletter when it comes. So do keep your eyes out for that. So time then for an update on my watch through of The Bill. Bit of backstory for you, just to recap. So having watched The Bill for many years on and off, I felt curious about the first 3 series because I had never got to see them. And then finally, earlier this year, I acquired them and began watching them from the beginning. And I enjoyed the characters in those first 3 series, characters that I hadn't seen before, like Inspector Kite and PC Lytton, and I especially liked D.I. Galloway. Last time on The View, I revealed that I had begun Series 4 of The Bill, the series where the format shifts from 60-minute episodes to half-hour ones, using a story, Sergeant Tom Penny's recovery from a shooting, to bridge that transition. Some very character-heavy episodes started the 4th series, new faces and loads and loads of character development. I've now watched 12 episodes of Series 4. Actually, I think I've watched a few more than that. I think I'm about 16 and possibly 17 now episodes of Series 4. And D.I. Burnside is now finally a regular member of the CID and a regular cast member. We've not seen an awful lot of them yet. Presumably the series writers are still crafting some stories to feature his character. A new WPC made a sudden appearance in a CAD room in the scene of one episode, I recall, which was a low-key entrance. I think that's Brind. Low-key entrance for Brind there. But I'm enjoying the Series 4 newcomers, Inspector Fraser and PC Ramsey, another in a line of coppers at Sunhill with a definite chip on his shoulder. The long-running character, Chief Superintendent Conway, has now arrived now as well. So the cast, it's really filling out. And there's more to come, I think. Because I'm pretty sure Tosh Limes was in it from pretty early on, wasn't he? So there's a feeling now that the series is really beginning to settle down and to run on some carefully laid lines. And slowly it feels like the character development stuff is starting to peter out a little bit and take a bit of a back seat, and the sort of problem of the week type episodes are starting to become the norm. But the character building, it was so strong at the beginning of this season, and the characters are now so strong and well defined that sort of now letting the situation that they encounter, the plot, in other words, taking priority, it's quite welcome. And you get a sense that the writers are sort of reaping the rewards of the groundwork that they've laid in. And of course, it's a half-hour format now, so too much character stuff, and it wouldn't leave much room for anything else. So yeah, with all the hard work done, the writers can now afford to have a little fun with their cast of well-defined characters. Even PC Taff Edwards, who's been around since the very beginning, has now firmly established himself as the one who whinges a lot. I have to admit, though, and this is a personal grumble, and I'm sorry if you're listening, or anyone who knows the guy, but I have to admit, I still find a few of writer Barry Appleton's scripts a little difficult to watch. He still seems prone to inserting random events into his stories, whether contextual or just artistic. The fact is, he overcrowds his episodes, throws too much at them. It's almost as if he has moments where he's got a crisis of confidence and has to put in a random bar brawl or something for fear of losing the audience's attention. His scripts often end abruptly. The bill isn't adverse to abrupt endings, we all know that. You may remember the sudden endings yourself, but Barry Appleton's scripts raise this a notch or two, to the point where, as a viewer, I sometimes come away not entirely satisfied or entirely sure what's going on. Yeah. Interestingly, series creator Jeff McQueen is still the go-to man when new ideas or characters need to be quickly established. McQueen's scripts are usually very heavy on the banter between characters, usually a good few quips and offhand remarks land as intended, and this serves to strengthen the characters and helps us believe in them. Barry Appleton can do all these things too, but not with as much aplomb, and usually adding something that doesn't quite fit into the narrative. Now, a few years ago, during lockdown actually, I watched maybe 40 episodes of The Bill, starting with the second episode of the fourth series, Three's Wise Men, I think it's called. Damn good episode. So last week, I had a dilemma. Do I skip these episodes and just pick up from the last episodes I remember watching on the UK TV Play, which would be somewhere north of the episode The Coop, an unusual episode in which Edwards and Ackland are held at gunpoint in a shed filled with dying hens. Yeah, do I skip ahead or watch them all through? Well, I've made a decision now. Being as this is a watch through and not a skip through, I will do as the title suggests, and I'm going to watch them. So of the 10 or so I watched since my last podcast, I remember at least 3. But first time around, those episodes were kind of robbed of context. So what I'm trying to say is that when I was watching them on UK TV Play, when I just started watching from the fourth series, the second episode of the fourth series, that was about 3 or 4 years ago now. 4 or 5 years ago now. So I want to rewatch those again, and I do actually, as it turns out, because I didn't watch them in context before. So I'm going to watch them in context this time, and I'm going to get a real feel of what's happening and the characters progressing as we go along. I think that's the way to go. So Superman, the animated series. Well, my partner and I are still watching this, and we're about 12 episodes into the first season. The last episode we watched was about one of Clark's ex-girlfriends from his days in Smallville. She figures out pretty quickly that Clark is Superman. Which wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't for the fact that she was dating Lex Luthor. Oh dear. It was a pretty good episode though, and it's an example of why I like this series and the Batman series as well. It's good to see the characters being developed the way they are. It takes a very mature approach to this than a lot of things made for grown-ups, to be honest. And I think to myself, fair play to the people making this, not to talk down to the kids, to the demographic that this was aimed at, and give them some real meat in the storylines. And this complements the huge superhero fights, really well. We watched the 2-part story that's in the middle of series 1. We watched both episodes back to back one afternoon as we chomped on some Haribos. I got to be honest, about a week after that, I remember almost nothing about it. I was more excited by the episode where the creepy AI responsible for hiding the truth about Krypton's imminent destruction found Superman, the last Kryptonian alive. That was a really creepy episode and very emotionally mature episode as well. It was action-packed, like all the best installments of this series, but between the action, there was some really good stuff going on there. I love that they teased the return of Brainiac from the very beginning of the series, sowing seeds for the later developments. It's so cool. It's so well done. I want to talk about the animation style because I never talk about things like this really. I'm always raving about the stories or the acting or whatever. So I really like the animation style of this series. It's like the animation. It's like the animated Batman series from the 1990s before they changed the style. So there's lots of square jaws, lots of shadows. The atmosphere is less moody than Batman, and Clark inhabits Metropolis, a city in daylight, compared to Batman's dark Gotham. You know, Batman usually comes out after dark, so that makes for a darker color palette, and that alone gives those episodes a sort of moodiness and an added menace. The brighter array of colors, because for Superman, because he comes out mostly in the day, he works in the day, doesn't he? It makes the series feel a lot sunnier, almost breezy. I realise I'm describing a cartoon like I would describe the weather, but that's how I feel when I'm watching it. The more colourful palette, though, it belies the depth and the subtext inherent in these stories. Often, I savour things I like. So there's like 35 episodes of this Superman series. They didn't make millions like with the bill, so these need to be savoured. 12 episodes in after starting this series back in, what was it, April? That should give you an idea of how much I'm enjoying it. I want to talk a bit about All Gas and Gaiters now, which I mentioned in previous podcasts. And the radio episodes of All Gas and Gaiters, starring William Irvin, Derek Nimmo, and John Barron with Robertson Hare, they are warm and delightfully funny. But the audio quality for the radio episodes, it can be a barrier sometimes. The episodes I have are supposed to be the cleanest sounding ones that are around, but still it is a barrier at times. So it's great to now own the DVD of the surviving episodes of All Gas and Gaiters. I like this series so much. I've broken a personal rule, which is never buy a series on DVD where there are more or as many missing episodes as there are existing ones, because to me it just seems pointless. But I've broken my rule. One, because each episode starts and finishes a new story, so the standalone nature means there are unlikely to be any ongoing stories or character arcs. And two, because All Gas and Gaiters is such good-natured fun. On DVD, I watched the pilot episode, The Bishop Rides Again, and The Bishop Sees a Ghost. On audio, I've listened to The Dean Goes Primitive and The Bishop Turns to Crime. All very enjoyable. And this is another series that I'm savouring, along with the other series I'm watching that star William Irvin, and they would be Mr. Hurt Rose and It's Dark Outside, which I've mentioned on previous podcasts. I've got my finger in so many different pies. I might need to start growing more fingers. That sounded so many different kinds of wrong. It's difficult to know where to start. What a disgusting mental image that was. But there you go. Now you've got what you come for. You won't get that. How very 2024. Disgusting mental image. You won't get that on TikTok. Well, you might actually. I don't know. I don't do TikTok or Facebook or any social media stuff. I gave it all up 6 years ago. Makes getting these podcasts known about a real pain, I can tell you. But I've got my principles, my morals. God, I'm tiresome. But I am what I am. And what I am is too bleeding self-righteous to change. Or maybe I'm just wonderful and wonderfully, naturally honest. What a self-aggrandizing thing to say. Whatever else I may be, though, I am a veteran of a non-line life. Do you like that? Non-line. Let's pass it on. Just tell him I did it, though. I am into ownership, so I try not to stream stuff. Ownership is cheaper in the long run, and I'm a control freak and a worrier. If the Russians ever drop a depth charge on an underwater internet cable, then Disney Plus will not be working, or any other streaming service for that matter. And then people will flock to people like me after that big disaster, where every spare bit of bandwidth needs to be kept for important essential services, and nobody can watch The Mandalorian except the 30 people who bought it on Blu-ray. I'm joking, of course. Of course I'm joking. I am joking. Or am I? If you're on social media, then feel free to join me in moderation or cessation of social media and read all about a post-social media life, a non-line existence, along with thought pieces and me sharing life experiences on Substack. You can subscribe to me on Substack. It's martingregorysview.substack.com. And then there's the lighter side of my nature. On noscriptforlife.wordpress.com. There's more light-hearted material with audio reviews and write-ups of watch-through shenanigans. And then there's the No Script for Life YouTube channel, where you can find previous installments of this podcast. So if you want more me, that's where to go. Until next time then, it's been an absolute pleasure coming to you, coming right in your ears every 2 weeks. Unless I'm on holiday. This is The View. I'm Martin Gregory. Thanks for listening.